Every human being has a basic instinct to help each other out. If a hiker gets lost in the mountains, people coordinate a search. If an earthquake levels the city, people all over the world send emergency supplies. This instinct is found in every culture, without exception.
At around 4:30 a.m., our satellites detected a storm approaching the Ares 3 mission site on Mars. The storm had escalated to severe, and we had no choice but to abort the mission. But during the evacuation, astronaut Mark Watney was killed.
I'm entering this log for the record. This is Mark Watney, and I'm still alive, obviously. I have no way to contact NASA or my crewmates, but even if I could, it would take 4 years for another manned mission to reach me, and I'm in a hab designed to last 31 days. So, in the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm gonna have to science the hell out of this. Okay, let's do the math. I gotta figure out how to grow 4 years worth of food here on a planet where nothing grows. But if I can't figure out a way to make contact with NASA, none of this matters anyway.
Houston, be advised.
We've got a video message. It's directed to the whole crew. Play it.
Mein Gott. Mark Watney's still alive.
Woo! In your face, Neil Armstrong.
We left him behind. Let's go get our boy.
This is something NASA rejected, so we're talking mutiny. And if we mess up the supply rendezvous, we die. If we mess up the Earth gravity assist, we die.
It's space. It doesn't cooperate. I guarantee you that at some point, everything's gonna go south on you. And you're gonna say, this is it. This is how I end.
Is it possible that he's still alive?
Kids with dreams and no sense of reality, and survived, and we're here. Those are the kind of moments in a life that you just don't get over.
So without any further ado, enjoy the show.
Thank you.
I always get a little nervous when you have to show a film here, because in many ways it's like bringing something home to the family.
Okay, hello and welcome to the press conference for The Martian.
But you're trying to make it look like New York. I said, yeah, that's great. No, that's not
this
bad.
Press conference is streamed live at
because the city's like a
TIFF.net
mecca.
and on the TIFF channel of
Premiering
YouTube.
a movie that took me 20 years to make in front of 2,000 people makes me want to cry.
Third row
I mean, there was a
back.
time that I can remember when
Everyone
people
else,
said, well,
no
film will
photography
die.
is permitted
It
at
hasn't
all.
and it
If
won't,
you're
and it's
interested
great.
in photographs from today, you're welcome to request them at the media site. There's volunteers in the room to assist you with your questions. Please remember to identify yourself and your media outlet. And if you can take a moment and turn your cell phones to silent. It's now my pleasure to welcome Richard Krause, our moderator for today, and the director, screenwriter, author, and members of the cast for The Martian.
Welcome, everyone. While everyone's getting settled, I'll do some quick introductions. Director and producer Ridley Scott's films include Alien, Thelma and Louise, Blade Runner, Gladiator, which won a Best Picture Oscar, Black Hawk Down, American Gangster, and Prometheus, among many others. Andy Weir, who is Andy's right behind me here, originally published The Martian as a free serial on his website before it made it to the Kindle bestsellers list. The print edition of the novel debuted at number 12 on the New York Times bestseller list. The Wall Street Journal called the novel the best pure sci-fi novel in years. Oscar-winning actor, screenwriter, and producer Matt Damon's films include Good Will Hunting, Saving Private Ryan, The Talented Mr. Ripley, Ocean's 12, The Departed, Invictus, and coming in 2016, a new Jason Bourne film. Jessica Chastain's films have frequently played at TIFF. The two-time Oscar nominee has starred in Zero Dark 30, The Help, Coriolanus, Take Shelter, and A Most Violent Year. Jeff Daniels has starred in everything from Terms of Endearment to The Purple Rose of Cairo and one of my favorite movies of all time, Something Wild. From the TIFF hits The Squid and the Whale and Looper to landmark television series like The Newsroom, he'll soon be seen in the new biopic Steve Jobs. Chiwetel Ejiofor first visited TIFF with Dirty Pretty Things in 2002, and since then has been seen in Kinky Boots, Children of Men, another of my favorite movies, and as Solomon Northup in 12 Years a Slave, for which he received an Academy Award and Golden Globe nominations, along with the BAFTA Award for Best Actor. Kate Mara starred in the political drama House of Cards and appeared in the series 24. She made her film debut in 1999 and has appeared in Brokeback Mountain, We Are Marshall, Shooter, Stone of Destiny, and Transcendence. Actor and musician Michael Pena has starred in many films such as Crash, World Trade Center Shooter, Observe and Report, Tower Heist, End of Watch, Gangster Squad, American Hustle, Fury, and Ant-Man. Donald Glover is an actor, writer, voice actor, comedian, rapper, singer, songwriter, and record producer. He was a writer for the NBC comedy series 30 Rock and is known for his role as the college student Troy Burns on the NBC sitcom Community. This year he has co-starred on the big screen in The Lazarus Effect and Magic Mike XXL. Mackenzie Davis is a Canadian film, television, and stage actress who garnered a Canadian Screen Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress at the 2nd Canadian Screen Awards for her performance in The F Word. Her other credits include the films That Awkward Moment, Smashed, Breathe In, and Bad Turn Worse, and the television series Halt and Catch Fire. Sebastian Stan plays James Buchanan, Bucky Barnes / the Winter Soldier in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He also appeared in the 2010 film Black Swan on television. His role on Political Animals earned him a nomination for the Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Movie in a Miniseries. And Drew Goddard is a film and television screenwriter, director, and producer. He has written for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Alias, and Lost. On the big screen, he wrote Cloverfield, World War Z. He has also made his feature film directorial debut with the 2012 dark comedy horror thriller, A Cabin in the Woods. That's it. We're out of time. Thanks for coming out, everybody. I appreciate it. Congratulations on The Martian, everyone. Mr. Scott, I wanted to start by asking you about something we were just talking about before as we walked up on stage here. I mentioned to you that I saw this film as being a Western. Mm-hmm. It's about a man who moves west, essentially, inhospitable terrain that he's got to make work for himself. And you said, I've always wanted to make a Western. What is it about Westerns that grab you so much?
I was brought up on Westerns. So I remember on television when I was a kid, and every Western I saw in my local hometown, we usually had John Wayne in it, and so I always wanted to work, because I was weaned on that idea of that it's always a man against the odds or man against nature. And I've always, I put myself always in that place of being the cowboy. In fact, when at 18, I think my parents thought I was retarded because I want to be a cowboy. But I've never done a Western, but I always apply that to everything I do.
And is that one of the things that drew you into this story, that made the story so appealing to you?
No, what drew me into what drew me into
Not
this?
at all. Thank you, Richard. No.
What drew me into this was actually the great screenplay and the great adaptation of a wonderful book. Because I didn't develop this, but in fact was offered it, and so I read it, and it's all about the material. It's all about the fundamental material. It's all about the screenplay. If you get it written, if you can get it on paper, the rest is fun and is relatively straightforward. Wouldn't you agree?
I'm going to turn it over to you in just a second. We're going to get the folks with the microphones to come see you, so don't ask a question without a microphone, please, and we'll point you out. Matt, I wanted to ask you about being alone on screen for as much of this film as you are, and if that provides a challenge to you, or if it's just, this is what's on the page and this is what I have to do.
Well, echoing what Ridley said, there was a really wonderful script there, and it cuts, the story cut back a lot to all these great actors doing really exciting things. So the fact that I didn't feel like I was going to bore anybody to tears, because if I started to do that, we could always cut back to the other story going on. So so I had that going for me. But the script really read, I read it and then I read it again right away, just because I couldn't believe how quickly it moved, and I kind of wanted to see how Drew had done that and constructed it. And as Ridley said, I feel like we had a really good kind of battle plan the whole time because the script was so tight.
All right, let's get the microphones out and around. Do we have, let's start right here with Bruce Kirkland, please.
Good afternoon, Bruce Kirkland, Toronto Sun. A question for Ridley Scott, because you have gone to space for thematic material before. And I'm curious if there, and I know this partly relates to your answer to Richard's question about Westerns, but is there something about outer space that allows you to tell more truths about humanity on planet Earth?
Oh my God, that's a complicated question. No, I think the fantasy of space, which is also now a reality, is a marvelous platform and a form of theater, if you like, where honestly almost anything goes. But when you do anything goes, whether you do a play or a book or a film, you've got to actually make your own rule book and stick within the confines of the rules that you make. And the easier, so if I'm doing space fantasy, like whether it's Alien or Prometheus, I've got to draw up the sidelines of my rule book and stick with them. And that within that is still a fantasy because it's never really going to happen. And this is a lot easier because actually you can lean very heavily on the science in the book, the performance of the way the characters are, the way the NASA people are, the way the JPL people are. So to me, this was a much more realistic movie. Okay.
And it will go right here. Yeah.
Hello guys, I'm with the Norwegian Evening Post, and there's one actor missing on the panel, and that's Axel Hennie. So Ridley, why did you pick him as Vogel? What was it like working with him? Same to you, Matt. Thanks a lot.
I'd seen a film called Headhunter, and which I thought was really good. I watched a lot of Scandinavian, Northern European films in recent years, because I think there's a lot of talent coming out of there. He always stuck in my mind, and because of that, when I cast, I take a great deal of trouble casting, because once I cast, they're all going to take care of me, truly. And so, if I cast properly, I can then concentrate on all other details and things when I'm actually directing on the day, because by the time we get to the studio, we've actually discussed the parts, discussed the roles, and everyone is doing their homework, and it enables me to relax. But Axel Hennie I hadn't seen before except that one thing. So when I'm coming to casting, I just said Axel Hennie. And I just stuck with it, met with him, loved him, and away we go. There's no science to it. It's just, everything's intuition for me.
Yeah, for me, Jessica would be better equipped to answer that, because those guys all work together more than I did. I hung out with Axel. Like we went to the Turkish baths together. I mean, maybe you want to hear about that. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, these guys all were doing more scene work together. I only got to work with these guys. I literally just met most of the cast right now. They were literally wrapped. 55 actors were wrapped by the time I started working on the movie. So it was a very different kind of movie for me. But I don't know, Axel, what do you think?
I want to hear about the Turkish baths.
Everybody.
Well, we had our kids too.
No, Axel was great. We all got along so well, and he was wonderful on set and really generous. And he's also a bit of a daredevil. We went and did some wind tunnel flying together, which was super fun. Long dinners. He likes his red wine, which we all partook in. We had a good time.
Andy, I'm going to throw a question to you as the novelist behind this. And I'll turn so I can see you. When you were first approached about this, the book had done extremely well, but then you were approached and said Ridley Scott was involved, and you thought it was all an elaborate hoax. Can you tell us why?
For a while, it was actually when I was working on the well, it was really more the print deal that I was worried it might be a hoax. It's just out of nowhere, I get people contacting me like, hey, I'm a literary agent. I think I could sell your book. Oh, okay, go ahead. And then, hey, Random House wants to make a print deal for your book. I'm like, oh, okay, go ahead. But this is all just email and voices on phones. And it just seems like you got to get really suspicious when people are offering to make all your dreams come true for like no readily apparent reason. And I kept waiting for the point where it's like, oh, well, we have this tax thing. We need $10,000. You know, I was just waiting for something like that. But once they started sending me the checks, then I figured, well, if they're scamming me, they're not very good at it. So that's about when it started to become real for me.
Start to really feel real.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead right here. Yeah.
Hi, Rudy Blair, Media Inc. This goes to Andy. Andy, what were some of your concerns about when the script was being written and, of course, the movie being made? Were there certain things that you were worried about that may not be transcend through the story itself? And what did you think of the movie?
I saw a cut of the movie a few weeks ago. I loved it. And I think I just, it's just like, for the first 5 minutes of the movie, I was choked up, like just trying not to cry, just because it's like, this is the sort of thing you fantasize about as a writer, something like this happening, but you don't really believe it'll ever actually happen. It's like when you're a kid in Little League and you're like, oh, you know, I'm gonna be in the World Series and it's bottom of the ninth, and then later you are. And I don't know. It's just it's really hard to describe the emotions that happen when you see it on screen for the first time. And then as for concerns, I didn't really get a chance to worry about the screenplay adaptation because Drew involved me in it. He didn't have to, but he did. He called me a lot. We talked, and he sent me revs of the screenplay for my feedback. I gave some feedback. He ignored some of it, and hey, it's a screenplay. But no, I was calm and happy the whole way through.
Drew, you say that Ridley Scott's creative DNA is embedded in your DNA. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us about working on this project with him.
I mean,
more interesting than the
turkey. When two men care for one another in a loving way. Look, he's my favorite filmmaker of all time. I can remember seeing Blade Runner. My dad took me to Blade Runner at 7, which is a terrible decision for a parent. Watching, Harrison Ford shoot naked women in the back, and suddenly I'm like, oh, I know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But it, that's right, right. It's just terrible, yeah. But between Alien and Thelma and Louise, just like he's our greatest filmmaker. I'm sorry to embarrass him right now, but. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing has been a dream come true, and when you get to work with your idols in a cast this good, it's what Andy said. It's a dream. You figure someone is playing a joke on you.
Well, one thing I like is that in the book there's a line where the main character, where Mark Watney says, "In space, no one can hear you scream like a little girl." And I guess Ridley wasn't willing to put an homage to himself in his movie because.
Did you have a hand in having that line cut?
No.
No.
And by the way, they weren't as nice to me as this when I was making the movie.
Go ahead, right here. Yep.
Hello, Stephen from Belgium. I was wondering, Jessica and Kate, can you tell us a little bit about the physicality of those mesmerizing spaceship glides?
It's part of the reason after working with Ridley Scott, it was the best part of the reason of making the film is the zero gravity stuff I was really looking forward to. And when I got on set, I realized how many people are involved in that. Because there's all these people in the pulley system that are controlling your movements that you have to then make look like you're doing it. And it's choreographed within an inch of its life, and we're just kind of along for the ride learning it, and I had so much fun. And when I saw it on screen the first time, I haven't seen the film completely finished yet, so I'm really excited about tonight. But I saw a cut of the film, and it's like being a little kid and watching these movies and hoping someday you get to do that. I don't really want to go to space, but I want to pretend to. And it was wonderful to do that.
But the other thing is that's really fun, I think, about making movies, and totally ridiculous that we are grown-ups doing this, is like in some of the tighter shots, oftentimes it makes sense not to do elaborate wire work. You know, your frame is only kind of a certain, so you can kind of do it. And we did it on Interstellar also. Two of my favorite directors, Ridley and Chris Nolan, doing the thing where you're in space like this, and you kind of and you act while you're standing on one foot and moving slowly, and it's totally ridiculous. But within the confines of that frame, it totally works, and you can't tell. So it's that's another thing that's really fun, is even as big as these movies are, and with all of the production value, you end up like you were a kid in your bedroom pretending that you're in space, which is fun, and it works.
Kate, you have some wire work and float. Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, I sort of the same experience as Jessica. It was very much surreal. I would never make it as an astronaut for a lot of different reasons, but those days were my favorites. I mean, it feels very much like a dance, and there's choreography to it. And but then once you're doing it, you really do. You feel like a little kid. And Ridley, maybe he was just faking it really well, but he seemed just as excited as we did when we were doing the scenes and floating through the air. We did have one scene where I'm just supposed to, well, all of us actually are just floating towards Matt and hugging him, and I felt really silly during that one. But you're trying to look as cool as possible, so that was probably the hardest acting job in the film, was floating and trying to not look like a total idiot, and just don't grin too big, because it is that thrilling.
And not bump into the furniture.
Yeah.
I guess while you're doing it as well.
It's kind of like what the stuff that they would teach you in acting school that's totally pointless. That's literally, you're like, this could and finally 20 years into making movies, like I could use one of the exercises, and it actually paid off.
Got another question right here, Carrie?
Carrie Roberts, The Next Take on Super Channel. This is open to all the actors. Working with NASA consultants, was there anything said to you that helped inform your performance?
I didn't talk to anyone, so I'm like...
I'm such a nerd when it comes to space exploration now, so I took complete advantage of this. And I got to go to JPL in Pasadena, meet with all the robotics guys, and see the twins of the Curiosity rovers, and do virtual reality to be on Mars to see what that would be like. And then I went to Houston and met with Tracy Caldwell Dyson, who's an astronaut, and talked to her. And yes, I learned all the technical things, but then just the human side of it was really beneficial to me. For example, when we were talking, she was talking about her husband, and I noticed she was wearing a wedding ring. And I just assume when people go to space, they don't wear jewelry. And just even something like that, which is why my character wears a wedding ring in the film. And she talked about how important it is when you're in space to keep your ties to Earth. So things like your wedding ring, or sometimes they'll surprise you with your favorite food. If you like M&Ms, you'll get a surprise thing of M&Ms when you're up there. All of that was really helpful to me.
And Chuta, you were in contact.
Guys from
European Space Agency. And that was fascinating because, it gives you an insight into the kind of personalities needed, to do this kind of work. I mean, obviously, these people are incredibly smart, but also they have to be very measured, very methodical, and it is, in the end, lives at stake, and they're all very aware that no matter what kind of preparations that you make, I think the program has the sort of, I think it's 2 pairs of eyes, so anything that you do, 2 people are watching you do it, so that to try and minimize the ideas of something going wrong, especially when astronauts are involved. So, but even then, things are bound to happen, and people have to be very capable of thinking on their feet and problem solving very quickly. And I just think that takes a certain kind of personality. I think that part of what happens in the film is that there's a lot of these guys, they do develop kind of a humor, and it's not really a gallows humor. It's actually just a way of rationalizing what they need to do, how they're going to do it, and dealing with that kind of front lobe problem solving.
And we certainly see that with Michael's character as well, in terms of the humor and the way that he jokes his way through a great deal of the stressful situations that happen.
I wouldn't necessarily call it like comedy or humor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like kind of like the nerdiest humor that you can possibly have in a spacecraft, and it's a way to deal with, there's a lot. I kind of got it like in when I was doing End of Watch. Sometimes you get so bored that you just make things up and try to make the time go by a little bit quicker, and that's what I try to do anyway.
Yeah. We'll turn it back. Let's go right here. Yep.
One of the things that I really loved about this movie is that there are so many roles for women in it, and that it's so diverse. It looks more like the world that I live in than most movies do, albeit a much better looking version of that world. So I wondered if the cast could maybe speak to the diversity of the film, and you too, Ridley, because I know you took a little bit of flack for the racial makeup of your last film, Exodus.
First Mexican in space. Write that down.
Who would like to start?
I was entirely alone in the movie, so I should.
I'm very happy that it's a very diverse group of actors and people. I'm very happy that on a crew of 6 people, 2 are women. That's actually better odds than the current NASA program in people in space. Tracy told me there's about 10% of astronauts that are women, so our odds are better. So hopefully the future, we're going in a good place. It makes me happy to see more than just one person on screen.
Ridley, was that?
Just the last part of the question. What did you say?
The diversity in.
Just the diversity of the cast in this movie, and sort of compared to some of the controversy that arose in Exodus.
Well, I've got no regrets about anything I've ever done, actually. And I was very proud of Exodus, but when they start saying, well, gee, shouldn't Moses have been black and shouldn't the wife be in Ethiopia? I'm going, I don't know, I wasn't there, okay? And therefore, and also, I would never have got it, it would have been limited. So, in a funny kind of way, this helped me that I had 4 universes revolving, not that I'd have any actual doubts about Matt holding the screen indefinitely in any time, seriously. But I did have moments where you said to me, listen, it's a lot of bloody voiceover, right? But the voiceover took on, we evolved differences in terms of, intonation about how you can have fun. A lot of the humor lay in the voiceover, in effect, in the understatement. So man on his own on Mars, JPL, the ship, and NASA was 4 quadrants, which I knew if I got slow somewhere, I could always cut somewhere else. But we never got slow. So that's why I think the film has got a great engine.
And I'll move along. And Donald, I'll ask you, do you know what an orbital dynamicist is still? Did you know before, or do you know now?
Why are you doing this to
me? You don't have to answer the question. I'm just throwing it out there.
I believe it's someone who studies the man-made objects that are put into space that orbit. Yeah,
that's
like
your
satellites.
Character. Tell us about the research that you might have done, because we have to believe that you understand what all this is.
You want to answer this? Like, that's what you said? No, we did. When I came in, I read a bunch of stuff, and then like they showed me a dude who worked there, who with his head shaved, and he was like, "That's the kind of guy you are," and I was like, "Okay, cool." So like I started reading up on like what those guys do, and like but I really just wanted to be like, I know how like strange people who don't have to interact with a lot of people are. Or at least they're not strange. It's just like that's just something you have to do. Like you were saying, it's like it's a gallows kind of. It's not a gallows humor. It's like you're thinking about like math all the time, and you're figuring out like how like that stuff kind of works. So like I feel like the whole time I was trying to figure out really how he's kind of interacting with other people. Because I didn't have to do actual math all the time. But, yeah.
It was kind of cool to see Troy play Abed.
Yeah, it really was. Like, I really did take a lot of cues. I did call him up. I was like, because, like, nice. It's a lot. And then there are some movements that, like, I got from him, too. But, like, yeah, it is a very kind of, like, my brain is somewhere else. Like, the emotional aspect isn't really there, except for, when I slip. Mm-hmm.
That fall that he did when we first met him actually was unplanned. When he spilled the coffee, walked out the shot, and went down like a sack of potatoes.
It was like...
What's great is he bounced straight back up and said, "I'm all right, we just used the take." It was fantastic. He went, bam. He said, "I'm all right," and he went back, and he just kept running.
It was good.
Yeah, it's good.
Slipped on my own coffee.
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about working with Ridley Scott and perhaps how his methods differ from other directors that you've worked with?
He doesn't differ from the great ones I've gotten to work with. He's the same as they are, which is, and he said it a little bit, he does it with casting, and then he tells you just enough for you to go. And he casts it well, and he's a pro. I said the other day, I didn't work with John Ford, but he's one of those guys, the Howard Hawks and the Billy Wilders and those guys. He's that kind of, so as an actor, you've been around, and now you get to work like a pro's pro. It's really a great day. It's a great day. And you walk on, like in this particular movie, you walk on the mission control set, and you're intimidated by it. But Ridley's over there going, "Yeah, I got this." And it really is comforting, for actors to be with a pro's pro like that. I loved it. Just loved it.
The one key difference being that he shoots 4 shots at a time.
Well, he does do that.
I mean, so it's John Ford, but with 4 cameras at once, it's like
and then
mental.
And then where are you gonna? You gonna sit? You gonna stand? I think I'm standing, and we're rolling. And it's that fast. It's like Clint. It's really cool. I really enjoyed it.
We'll turn it back over. Let's go right here. Yep.
I'm here, Ernesto Garrat from El Mercurio, Chile. A question for Mr. Matt Damon first. How was the process in building this character? I mean, it's kind of MacGyver from space. About the sense of humor, because it has a lot of comedy, and about your potato diet. And, I mean, do you eat potato right now? And for Mr. Ridley Scott, I want your opinion about the genre, science fiction genre. I don't know if you enjoyed Gravity a few years ago by Alfonso Cuarón. Thank you, and congratulations for the movie.
Thank you. Yeah, we did. We actually grew potatoes in the soundstage, the neighboring soundstage, because those are all obviously real potatoes in the movie at various stages of growth. So we actually had a little potato farm. Okay. And had fun with the whole potato, all the little potato scenes that we did. But all that humor really was in the book. I mean, all of that stuff, and Drew really mined the book for all the great lines, and I mean, as many as we could get into the movie. And again, I mean, it was, as Ridley said at the outset, that we started with this document that was just really great, and so when you get a really great script, you don't want to, you don't want to bronze the gold medal, So the key is just kind of knowing when you need to work it a little bit, and knowing when to just shut up and say the lines. So.
Mr. Scott, what do you think about this? what do you think about the actual science fiction, and if you could give me some thoughts about Gravity by Alfonso Cuarón, for instance. Thank you.
I don't understand. Say that again.
Thoughts about Gravity by Alfonso.
Oh,
about science fiction in general.
Science fiction. The big daddy of science fiction really was Stanley Kubrick, and I remember sitting down watching the newly released 2001 in London one afternoon. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You could smoke in those days, so I went in smoking in this big theater, and I watched 70mm version of 2001. There was no one in the room, which is shocking to me, because to me that was then the threshold of, if we're regarding what we do as theater, film is theater really, and it was the threshold of really, for me, the beginning of what now, okay, I now want to do a science fiction movie. So never forget Stanley, and Stanley was actually very much in cahoots and in competition with NASA. He was concerned that they were going to beat him to the moon before he could get out his bloody movie. And so he was using their designer called Macquarie. In fact, there's a beautiful mural of Macquarie's up in Houston, huge mural, beautifully painted. And Macquarie was designing their suits, the interiors of the ships, etc. He was styling them. And Stanley took all that styling. That then influenced George, definitely, in Star Wars, which is, I think, George Lucas's first Star. The one he directed was seminal. My Alien was definitely affected by Stanley and Star Wars. And then, so it's all going down the line of whoever opens that door, and reality is really great. Now, Cuarón's film is terrific, but that is really about the reality of NASA and what actually goes on. So just the exercise of doing all that in space is absolutely bloody magnificent. It's a real son of a bitch to shoot, and I had great admiration for it.
Mackenzie, your character Mindy is someone who is working sort of at a lower level in the organization, and then makes a huge discovery. And in the press notes here, you said now she sits at the grown-ups table meeting with the brass, and it's intimidating. Did you feel that way at all, being on this set with Ridley Scott and Matt Damon and Jessica and everyone that's involved in this?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. How did it manifest itself?
Yeah. How did that manifest itself? I guess, yeah, as far as Ridley is concerned, the way he shoots with the 4 cameras, I mean, everything was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. NASA was the biggest room I'd been in with the biggest computers, and there were the most cameras that my head was inside of, this sort of cage of cameras, and it manifested itself in intimidation, and then discovering that everyone was really nice, and it was fine. Mm-hmm. I'm nervous now.
Okay, well, I'll go back out here. Then let's go, where do we have our microphones here?
Yeah. I can add something.
Absolutely.
I started off as a director where there was no film school, there was no theater, there was nothing. I was a designer who was one day, for some bizarre reason, given by BBC a script, said, okay, you're on in 3 weeks, you're going to direct that. And I was given an office with a middle-aged warhorse of a PA who had been through every conceivable evolution of making everything. So I sat with 2 books. One was Female Spotlight and one was Male Spotlight. And I'd say, is he any good? She'd say, nah. You good? Good. So that's why I cast my first show, and I was on live with 6 cameras, and where the show was very popular at that point. Not for 13 million people in the night, quite a lot of people. And from that, I got into traditional, this is a good story, so bear with me. A traditional rehearsal where you'd have an old church hall or a scout hut or some church, factory marked out with sets on the ground in tape by some PA with a chair, a table, a glass of water, and all that shit. I'm just telling you, all you actors, I've been through the whole bloody rehearsal period. And I know when there's a moment where you can over-rehearse, and what you can do is kill the evolution, kill the natural instinct of the actor. If you cast right, let them free. As long as the script's specific, I turn them loose. So when they feel I'm a little bit, what am I going to do? That's the way it should be. And that's why I always shoot first take and second take. And usually within first and second take, first rehearsal is always shot. There is no rehearsal for the actor. They know they're on, and I've got 4 cameras already because I know what to do with 4 cameras. And there's a natural intuition. There's a little bit of chemistry. There's a little bit of fear, and that you're going to shoot. And out of that, invariably, you get 1 or 2. You get it. What did Clint say to you, which I think is still marvelous?
Yeah, I asked him for another take, and he said, why, you want to waste everybody's time?
So I said, everyone finds their own style. I turn them loose. I cast great and turn them loose. So I found out that she's a great comedian, actually, great natural instinct. And she found her own character walking from that kitchen with her thing and starting mumbling on the desk. That was her, not me.
We get a question back here.
Astrid Rin from the International Newswire DPA. I wanted to ask Mr. Scott about the great soundtrack of the movie. And it's very retro, the 70s music in a very futuristic and modern story, space trip story. So I wanted to ask you,
mean
how did you take this decision to put
No, the pop stuff.
that music?
Popular music is actually in the book. And I must say, I questioned a little bit of it. Now and again, I thought, geez, I hate that shit. Okay, but then I put it in, and
So did Mark.
Bugger me if it didn't work. Okay, so I just stuck with the plan, and it works out really well. And so nothing was changed. I think we took out 1 Bowie. Originally there were 2 Bowies, right? I think I took out 1 Bowie, and the score was by a guy that I know very well, Harry Gregson Williams, because I think the score was pretty magnificent as well. Yeah. It was a nice mix. Harry loved the music, so he then did his score around the music.
Sebastian, what were the differences between working on this set, perhaps, and working on your other huge franchise, that the Captain America was the Marvel films?
Well, green screen, for instance, was a big thing. I mean, the sets here were all so detailed, and everything was built from scratch, and just having that to work off of definitely was very resourceful in a lot of different ways. This is a very real film, in my opinion. I mean, Mars and going to Mars and so on is definitely going to happen, I think, in our lifetime. And so, beyond me being a big fan of that concept and NASA since I was a kid, I just loved being a part of a movie that took place on Earth and was, and then Mars, but was also very real and grounded. I think I felt very elevated by being surrounded by all these lovely people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Neil Köksal with CBC News, Turkish name, by the way, so thanks for the Turkish bath references. A line from the trailer struck me, actually, the line that says, every human being has a basic human instinct to help each other out. I've been covering the Syrian refugee crisis quite a bit, so maybe it stuck out for me for that reason, but I wondered if you thought, and Matt, I'll start with you, but anyone else who'd like to answer, I wonder if you thought some of that sentiment is missing right now here on planet Earth.
I can certainly feel like it reading the newspaper. But look, that's a reason to put this out there for us. And, it's a really optimistic and hopeful movie. And, and sometimes that's our job, is to put something like that out in the middle of really tough times. Drew described this the first time I met him as a love letter to science. And we talked for about an hour and about just the incredible optimism and the uplift of the story. And I left there thinking, like, yeah, that's something that would be wonderful to put out into the world. And maybe that'll be, maybe it'll catch on.
Also, politicians don't really represent human instinct, And a lot of what happens is choices made politically that don't represent me. And I don't think represent human instinct particularly. In fact, can be deliberately made to be contrary to human instinct, for other reasons. So I still believe absolutely in the sentiment of this story, and I think it does represent the better part of our nature,
I have to say it was quite a shock, too, looking at that one picture of the migrant flow across the Chain Bridge in Budapest, which is right where we shot this movie. And that was the view from the hotel, is the Chain Bridge. And so to see, thousands upon thousands of people walking to Austria from there, having just been there 6 or 8 months ago was really, arresting for me.
One thing that goes back to like the diversity of the cast that
We spoke about before, I noticed was like, I think one thing I like about this movie is like, it's about, we can't do this alone. Like, I think the internet kind of opened up an idea of just like, ego doesn't mean anything. Like, you see it so much. And this one thing kind of, I like this movie because it makes sure that it's like, yeah, you can't do it alone, like one person. And like, you can do all you can, but at the end of the day, like, you need a lot of people. And like, and they need to be a lot of different types of people with a lot of different types of ideas. And like, we are like Swiss Army knife together. We can't really do it alone. So I like, that spoke to the diversity of the cast to me.
Canadian, because we're seriously, we want to put a wall. I don't know if
Right,
you've
right.
read.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Just to the north.
We spoke
Just
about
to
that
the
a
north,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, just to the north.
You're gonna have to go, Mackenzie.
Yeah, yeah. No, Mackenzie got in before they built the wall. We just have time for one more question right there.
Hi, I'm Kenny from Indonesia. This is for Matt. Since you act most of the time alone in this film, for you, what is the big difference for you personally as an actor to act alone and to act in a group of people like in Ocean series? Thank you.
Well, I never listened to the other actors anyway in the scenes, so no, that was the reason I really wanted to do the movie. I knew Ridley was going to be standing next to me the entire time, so obviously that mitigates the risk substantially. But that was the challenge. It was a really interesting challenge, and it was kind of ours to crack together. And we sat down in pre-production and kind of went over the script over the course of days and just sat there kind of planning our strategy, and neither of us had ever done anything like it, so we didn't know if it was going to work, and that was also the fun.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the cast and director of The Martian, and enjoy the rest of TIFF.